All right, rewatchers, we have hit that rewind button, got through the time portal, and wound up at Trey's house. We are ready for another retro rewatch.
That's right. Part two. Make sure to like, subscribe, share. The Retro Rewatch podcast had good viewership and some good comments from Life After Fighting. Check that on the previous video. But today we're in person here in Charlotte, North Carolina, the second time, and we're gonna rewatch as we did 1992 Rapid Fire on Blu-ray with the late great Brandon Lee, also Powers Booth.
He is
So
also late and great.
both late and great. Rest in peace on both. But yeah, 1992. Chris hadn't watched this in years. I think I've watched highlights of it on YouTube. Always, I think both of us always been a Brandon Lee fan. Personally, The Crow, which he
Yeah.
unfortunately passed in, was his probably best. But I always thought this was maybe like a close second. And he was really building his career. Showdown with Tokyo was solid. And I think he had what, Laser Mission, some of those
Yeah,
others.
that was awful, though. Like that
Yeah.
was that was like next level bad. That was like VHS level
Yeah.
stuff.
But I thought like, hey, rapid fire putting him on the map. He was did the Crow, unfortunately, and he was just about to get just like a rocket strap of stardom. 28 years old. I think everybody knows the story, but yeah, just gone too soon. But it was good. It was a good watch, good rewatch. Watched it today actually. Blu-ray was clearer than some of my like VHS standard DVD crap I probably watched in the past. I was trying to point out some things. But 1992, a lot of gung fu, some great martial arts scenes. I guess we'll go over a little trivia at first, as I always like to do it. Rapid fire, $10 million budget, and it made 14, which I guess back then I wouldn't really call it a hit, but it made money. But I think it really put him on the map. And it's also Dwight H. Little joint.
Yeah, so I
So
mean, like, Dwight H. Little, he's come up a couple of times in our previous talks because in my opinion, Halloween 4 is the best Halloween of the Halloween movies. It's got Daniel Harris in it. Like it's good. The Mask changed it in Halloween 4.
yeah,
And he was the director of that. And then also our favorite always, Steven Seagal, Marked for Death. He was
that's
the
right.
director of that.
Those
And
crazy
then
Jamaicans, man.
yeah. And then of course, if there's a big TV show, he has probably done a lot of work on it. Like, I mean, I don't even know if I could tell you off. I know he's done like Bones, Millennium, I mean, a lot. Like, I mean, he's been on like 70 different TV shows or something. They're all like big time stuff.
It was really good martial arts sequences. I kind of like the beginning of it. It's kind of had this slow mo, showed him doing like a kep up. He was doing some of his Jet Kune-Do from his late dad, Bruce Lee, legend. And he was had a good like charisma on screen. Good looking guy with the whole, he was
No homo.
yeah, no, I can say that. Multi ethnic there, being Asian and white, but carried himself really well. College student at the time. I think he was probably what 27. Oh, also looks like he directed Murder at 1600 too.
Yep, that's
Dwight
correct.
H. Little, by the way, that was good. But good villains. Also had the guy Barry, just looked him up, Williamson. He was in Sudden Death, and Powers Booth was in Sudden Death with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Both of those popped up in it. But good villains started out. I guess they were in like Vietnam, going over some like heroin product and
Well,
everything.
I mean,
But
technically,
yeah,
when it started out, they were in China
okay, that's what it
because, I
was. They
mean,
were
we were,
sweating over there. Yeah.
well, I
I
mean,
was thinking
I
Vietnam.
don't know. I guess what
It looked like
I guess
Vietnam.
it did start in Vietnam because it started with the guy Tao or whatever, and
Yeah.
then eventually, whenever we were introduced to Brandon Lee's character, then that was when they were in China at like Tiananmen Square because they were doing the rallies on the Berkeley campus. So you were actually right on that. That's my bad.
No problem. But how about fight scenes wise? Because that's what it was known. I felt like some pretty good angles. He was using Jeet Kune Do. I looked at the trivia on IMDb, Wing Chun, and probably some kickboxing. But he had some good kicks. I remember on the early scene when they were at the party and everybody kind of let's just say got disrupted at the party
Yeah, I mean,
with the
because they had the assassination there that he happened to witness, and that was when you really had your call to action. Everything that happens afterwards is because of that event.
yeah.
But Yeah, so I mean, the thing is though, like with what was really kind of interesting about this movie
Yeah.
compared to like some other martial arts movies other than Jackie Chan, like really as much as hand to hand and like
Mhm.
all the different styles like you're talking about,
Yeah.
really as much as anything, he used the environment, like
Mhm.
refrigerator doors and like, I mean, actual doors and,
Yeah.
you know, throwing, you know, taking a drawer out full of like knives and forks and stuff and throwing that at somebody,
Yeah.
grabbing a grill like fork, you know, to
That's
stab
right.
someone with, you know, there's,
Yeah.
you know,
More realistic.
kicking through, you know, in the party scene, you know, he kicked through like the stairwell,
Yeah.
like the
That
the
was
the
it.
struts in the railing,
That was
and
good.
kicked somebody down. Like, I mean, there was so much multi-layer fighting. There was a lot of really good stuff
Yeah.
that I mean, other than Jackie Chan, like, you know, using like ladders and buckets and stuff. I don't know a whole lot of other martial artists that really use the environment kind of like they did in this,
Yeah.
which is really unique. And of course, that would make him a little different than like his dad, you know,
Yeah.
because he always, you know, you can't help it. He was always kind of in the shadow of his dad.
That's
And I
right.
mean, in a lot of ways, we were kind of talking about this during the movie. Like, I mean, you certainly respect Bruce Lee. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I think he
Same.
paved the way for martial arts movies, at least in America. I'm sure in Hong Kong and stuff they were making martial arts movies, but in America, I mean, I don't know that you would have Van Damme and even Dolph Lundgren and, you know, Scott Atkins, and, you know, some of that stuff might not happen without Bruce Lee. But that being said,
Pioneer visionary.
right. That
Yeah.
being said, I mean, those guys, you know, kind of took it and did a lot different with it. But
Yeah.
Brandon had more than his dad, I
Yeah.
think. You know, we kind of talked about that too. And one reason, like he was gonna, I really believe, and I think you agreed with me that he was going to catapult to superstardom was not just the fighting ability, which he had. He was very quick, very unique,
Yeah.
good looking guy, but he also had a lot of dramatic chops. And I think The Crow really showed us that, where
Yeah.
The Crow had fight scenes in it, but they weren't like great staged choreographed fight scenes. They were a lot more down to earth, like any man kind of fights.
Yeah.
But he had a lot of dramatic chops. And I mean, so you put those two things together, I think he was in. This movie was what, 92, right?
1992.
So by then you already started to have a decline of like martial arts action movies that fast. You know what I'm saying? Like we still had what, Time Cop came after this, right?
94. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we had a few that came after this, but really, was there a good one after Time Cop? Because I mean, you had stuff like Van Damme started doing things like Knockoff and what's that other one he did with Dennis Rodman? That wasn't
Yeah.
Knockoff, was
That
it? That was
after Street Fighter sudden
Double
death, he
Team.
was doing the drugs and he got blacklisted because he had that big contract. I think it was from like
Well, so I
Columbia.
mean,
So after that, to answer your question, yeah.
yeah. So, but
Van
then you
Damme
got like
was.
Jeff Speakman, and you got all these other guys that they were like
Yeah.
bottom tier. They were never like super huge to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, what would have sustained Brandon is he would have had those dramatic chops, like after The Crow, that he could have been more. I mean, he, you
Yeah.
know, for whatever you want to talk about Van Damme, he's not really considered a great actor. Neither
Yeah.
is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, you could, people would debate Stallone whether he's a great actor. I mean, I absolutely think he's a great actor. You look
Rocky.
back at Rocky, and I mean, well, even in his action movies like Rambo, I don't think he gets enough credit for
Yeah.
like the
Right.
range he has in there. But
Yeah.
anyway, getting a little off topic, but with Brandon, you kind of see a lot of that stuff here too. You know, I mean, not quite as much dramatic chops, but like the fight scenes. I mean, it's rapid fire. I mean, once the action starts, it
Yeah.
just about never stops. It's in some ways, it's almost too much.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like numbing how much there is because action scene after action scene
There
after
is.
action scene after action scene, with not a whole lot of character depth and advancement. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. And then back to the fight scenes, I think one of the
Sorry.
others that was original was he did this like joint break pop and the gun popped up. That was pretty original and cool. Yeah, he would. There was the fight scene, I think, when he was kind of went to go visit Chicago and had some good kicks there. Through the refrigerator, did something down like spin kick that was cool. I mean, at the very end, he was crawling around on the fence, fighting
Mhm.
guys. He was kind of using the laundry or whatever when they were at like the cocaine lab or heroin lab.
Well, you know, after
Yeah,
the shootout with the FBI, where he
yeah,
was using the doors and stuff, I
yeah,
mean, he had a scene where he like went from it was like a terrace or something to
yeah,
a fence, and then
yeah,
from a fence like down to the ground. But we're not talking. I mean, talking a tiny little fence that he was bouncing
yeah,
around. And I mean,
yeah.
I feel confident that was probably him. Now some stuff like with the motorcycle
That was probably
driving through the glass and everything, I feel
yeah,
very confident that was a stunt guy.
yeah,
But some of the other stuff that was more like down to earth, like climbing and jumping and all, that was probably him.
yeah.
You know.
And he had a cool scene. They put it in slow mo. I mean, it was good for like the night too. Is he had the silencer gun, had his shirt off, he, real lean guy, he was ripped in it, lean, and it had him kind of like running through. It was like a
Like
good,
bridge struts kind of thing and
see,
like jumping.
yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
shot for like a trailer. So that was cool. But
He
yeah,
had enough police protection.
he did. And I like the chemistry between him and Powers Booth. I
Yeah,
thought
I
they
did
were
too. That was really
he was
good.
good. I guess the girl in that was all right. I know we had to have the random love scene with the 90s ballad.
Yeah.
Don't take me
And
now.
you know, I said it during the movie kind of as a joke, but I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure that was like a boob double too. Like, 'cause, I mean,
yeah,
you didn't see her head like while the breasts were shown and all.
yeah.
They were pretty big.
I feel like
I think it was a boob double.
that was kind of thrown in there. Like, all right, we
That was that.
gotta have
That
some
was that
boobs.
not quite 80s, but still 80s. Like even though it's early 90s,
And
like
the ballad montage,
obligatory.
and it has
Yeah,
the ballad montage, you showing them doing their thing, and it's showing villains and everything.
I mean, even though it's 92, like
Yeah,
it's very much an 80s, like
it
over
is.
the top. Like
It's good.
every character's like hyper, like,
Yeah,
like a caricature of like the villain and stuff. And yeah,
yeah,
like everything's like the FBI guy's a double. And then like, the local policeman's a good guy and he's like off the rails. He's a rebel cop, all those tropes. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And like all of it,
And then
all thrown in there.
the gunplay, I thought was pretty well. I mean, a lot of like Glocks in it, had some like Gatling
Tons of different
guns and
guns.
yeah,
Had an FM foul, M16s,
there you go. I think I
MP5s,
read on trivia it was like
30 cals,
34
50
different
cals.
guns,
Yeah,
which
I mean, I
was
believe it. You had Berettas and street sweepers and
yeah,
uh, hot, was it hot? I forget the name of the shotgun, but wide variety of arms,
yeah.
wide variety.
And I'll say the score too was good compared to earlier today, and this might be a hot watch coming out. We watched Mean
Mean
Guns,
Guns,
and
Albert
let's just
Pune.
say score on that was random as hell.
If you love
Macarena,
Mamba,
you love Mamba Mexican music in an action movie in the '90s, just random,
I mean, it gets you going, it gets your blood pumping, your
yeah,
heart pumping. You got to get moving.
that might be a rewatch. It's a little tease. We'll
Yeah.
might let Chris handle that one. But all in all, I thought it was good. All right, so going back, I was going to ask, so Chris, you hadn't seen this one in years, what, 20, 30 years? How was the rewatch? Did it age well?
So
Looking back at it, I was going to ask you that.
I'll be honest, like,
Yeah,
I think rewatch was better. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I think,
better than you remember.
yeah,
Okay.
because like 20 years ago, I remember thinking about it kind of like, okay, it's just a nonstop action with no substance,
Okay.
which it still is.
Yeah.
But nowadays, you don't get as much strong male action heroes.
Mhm.
You don't get like just straight up bloody action. You get like CGI gun blasts and all this other junk. And I
Yeah.
mean, being able to see like real action where you got these stunt guys going through these different things, and it was honestly pretty good action, especially the hand-to-hand action was
Sure.
pretty innovative,
That's good.
more so than I think I gave it credit for 20-25 years ago. Maybe at the time I was so inundated with like Van Damme and other stuff, maybe I didn't appreciate it for what it was, but I think
Yeah.
the rewatch was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like it's not Oscar worthy.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily like a genre altering movie, but it's very enjoyable. It's very entertaining.
Yeah. Oh, he had good charisma, something about it. And then, yeah, that's why I brought it up. And then Chris,
It had really
physical,
good stunt setups. I mean, like right
physical
now, I
media.
don't. You're not showing it, but there's a
Yeah.
picture of him on the walkway where he does his legs being held, and he does a spin kick
Okay.
off the walkway. That was pretty good, multi-tiered fight scenes and all that kind of good stuff. I mean, there was a lot of, even though it's a lot of action, it's a lot of unique action. You know what I'm saying? That was really kind of different scene to scene,
It was.
different villains and stuff. Like it was good.
Yeah.
A lot of henchmen,
Yeah.
a lot of like known henchmen from the '90s. You knew a lot of their names, which I actually didn't.
Yeah,
Like
a
some
lot
of
of
the Asian
Asian hit,
guys.
a lot of
Yeah,
Asian hit. James Liu,
you had the
like
guy with the goatee from Die
yeah,
Hard.
Al Ling Long or whatever. He got killed a lot in it. Also, a little on the backstory. So they actually had a sequel in the works before he passed. I think they were looking at it maybe right after The Crow. So it's just I don't know that just him dying always like really kind of haunted me. And I was a really big Crow fan. I've seen it. I mean, Chris is a big fan too. I've seen it 10 or more
Yeah,
times.
the third video we ever did, we talked about the
Yeah,
Crow.
yeah,
But
just the whole it was always just growing up with it and then him passing. And I guess it's about like what it was about, him being kind of dying and coming back from the
mm,
dead. But it was just a little eerie. But man, just calling way too soon. And I think we were looking at it, he'd be like like
he's like 60, like
he would have
thereabouts.
been 60, which is crazy.
And I mean,
And
so
watch him.
he's been dead longer than he was alive, which was kind of shocking to think about, like our age, kind of thing, like to be able to say that about him. But I do think this is probably his best movie. That's not The Crow.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
Hands down.
yeah,
And starring vehicle, like we mentioned earlier, I mean, he was just getting ready.
Yeah, getting ready to take off. To
Yeah,
me, he had because even like because he's the star in this, right?
yeah,
So like after The Crow and after this, his next best movie is probably like Showdown in Little Tokyo,
yeah,
but he's not the star. Dolph Lundgren is.
yeah. Oh yeah,
I mean, he's a co-star. I mean, he's
yeah.
got a lot of a lot of parts, this, that, and the other, but he's not the star. So I mean, he was on the right trajectory. You know what I mean?
It was. Yeah.
Before the tragedy that happened on The Crow.
Yeah. But yeah, all in all, I thought it was a good rewatch and good like '90s throwback. And I know we've been doing more modern stuff, so we want to kind of
Yeah,
get back to our roots.
yeah, that was something that we definitely want to make a point of today to get back and kind of watch an old action movie like while we had the opportunity. And I don't know if we need to spoil it here, but we watched Terrifier 3 as well. We're gonna hold that. We're
Yeah,
not gonna say too much about that.
yeah.
We'll talk about that another time, but that'll be another teaser for something coming up. So we're trying to hit a bunch of different genres and stuff, come up with some ideas for some content down the road.
Yeah, also get more fan engagement. Hey, please comment below if you'd like for us to see and review anything you like to. We'll always check it out and do some research. So, yeah, always good to hear from the fans and comment. So comment below on that. Anything from. I think we talked about this a while back. What would you classify? I don't know if we talk about as a rewatch. You think how old does it have to be to maybe be like a retro or a retro? I remember
So
you said cars, but how
yeah, I
about
was
movie
thinking say
wise?
a,
Yeah,
a retro like a classic car is 21 years.
yeah.
So I don't know if you want to use that. I mean,
This is a good
in
one, right?
some ways you could almost use a decade because like sometimes you have political influences, you have like changes in like clothing and car styles and stuff like that a decade is actually a pretty big difference in time when you look back. Like the 80s are pretty definable by like cocaine and like the pastel colors of Miami Vice and Ronald Reagan and all the opulence of the 80s.
Yeah.
Then you've got the 90s, it was real grunge. It was real like kind of in WWF, they call it like the era of attitude,
Oh yeah,
stuff like
Attitude
that.
Era.
Like
Yeah.
the end of the '90s, where it was like, oh, the rebel, you can't tell me, just
Mhm.
you've got these very, a lot of dark colors, a lot of browns, stuff like that. The '70s is very different than the '80s.
Mhm.
So I mean, you could use a decade. I don't know, but
Yeah.
to use something else that I know is relatable as a classic would be a car
Yeah.
for
There you
what
go.
that's worth.
It's a good definition. So, any more thoughts on Rapid Fire 1992?
This is not one that's going to have a whole lot of like depth. I mean, this is not something you're going to write like a college term paper over. You know what I'm saying? So I
It's
don't
good
know,
action flick. It's
but
good.
it's
It's
it
fun.
is a very fun, good
It's
action
fun. Yeah.
flick. I do think that some of the stuff with Brandon specifically, I don't know that he would say it, but it is kind of interesting. Like in the movie, he went without a dad because he
Yeah.
died in Tiananmen Square,
Yeah.
right? And in real life, he went for a significant portion of his life without his dad because he died early.
Yeah.
And then in the movie, like his character, you've got the loss of his dad and the anger over that because the whole time he believes that his dad was doing something he didn't, he shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah.
Not that he was doing something bad, he was working for the military, but he died for somebody else's cause. And then Powers Booth, his character almost becomes like a father figure to him within the movie,
Yeah.
and he kind of has this revelation of like sometimes it's not that you die for something that you don't believe in, or you die for something instead of for your family or this, that, and the other. But I mean, sometimes doing right is just simply doing right.
Right.
And I think that there was some interesting themes with that you could kind of play on if you wanted to look for something deeper in the movie,
Yeah.
and something that may have been something more personal to Brandon, maybe possibly, than some of the other stuff he did prior.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Something that might give, okay, we say this is one of his best movies other than The Crow. Some of the reasons why.
Yeah.
If you're going to look for plot depth, that's where it is. And that is some pretty good stuff. And one
Right.
reason why you say, okay, excuse me, the female might not be all that strong. The villains are pretty good, but there's a good rapport between
Yeah.
Powers Booth and him. And that's the reason why is that plot device. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's
Right.
why. And then Powers Booth is a pretty good actor. He was in some good
Yeah. He
movies. You know
was.
what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that was really good. I don't know that in Brandon's other movies you have actors that are the caliber of Powers Booth. So that brings something to the film and another reason that would be worth watching it. Does that make sense?
Right. Other than the Crow, Crow had great supporting cast. Right.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
Correct. Now I mean, we're
Hold on.
saying anything other than The
Okay. I
Crow.
got you. Yeah. Yeah.
Anything other than The Crow. The
Yeah.
Crow is like the mecca. There's
Yeah.
no debating. It's full stop. I mean, The Crow is one of the greatest films ever made. I mean, I don't know if it's a top 20. I mean, there's a lot of movies that are made out there, but
I'll say this going out on a limb. I don't watch a lot of like comic book movies, but I have my favorite comic book movie, even though it's smaller, is The Crow. Well, that I always
Okay,
say
I mean,
that.
that's fair.
People would say, "Hey, Marvel, bring all that," and I would always come back, "Hey, I'm a '90s guy or '90s kid, whatever." Crow,
Yeah.
check it out. I mean, I know the special effects aren't like it used to be, but his performance was great. How they
Special
wrote
effects
it,
of the
the
Crow
dark,
are pretty good.
yeah,
I mean,
pretty
a lot of
nice.
practical effects before, like a lot of CGI and stuff. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
But
Man, but I hate it. It's like third time around, but man, it's just like he had such potential, and it's I don't know, that was just always tough one. Just gone too soon. I'll say on that one. Brandon Lee, the man, if you're up there, we miss you, buddy. You had a lot
another
of
man, the
potential.
myth, the legend.
He is man, myth, legend, and it's still like eerie. Him and his dad almost passing at
Did you
the
ever
same
see,
time or something.
again, not
Yeah,
not to get too far off, but they did an unsolved mysteries. Did you ever see that? There was an unsolved mysteries that was about Brandon and his dad.
I heard there
And
was some weird
yeah,
conspiracy type.
there's like the ninja conspiracies that,
Mhm.
like Bruce Lee was teaching martial arts to the Westerners that he wasn't supposed to teach, or telling them
I
about
heard it was a
ninjutsu.
mob head or mafia head too.
Yeah, and in the unsolved mysteries, they talked about there was like in China, it's a very big thing. You know how like in France they've got golems and stuff on
Yeah.
like churches and things like that. Well, in China, it's a big deal to have like a mirror,
Mhm.
like a family like mirror. That's
Right.
and I mean I'm speaking from what I remember about the show. So anybody out there that's Asian, if I'm screwing this up, I sincerely apologize.
Right.
But they talked about this mirror that was important to families to like ward off evil spirits. And when Bruce Lee died, there had been like a typhoon or a hurricane or something like that, and his like ancestral home, the mirror had been destroyed and gone. And
Mhm.
then like that day, Bruce Lee died under questionable circumstances. And then the same thing with Brandon.
Yeah.
Like, that mirror had been replaced, but like that day that Brandon died, that he was shot,
Yeah.
that mirror was gone. It had been destroyed by some, strange means. So there was,
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever watched Unsolved Mysteries, but they talked about a bunch of wacky stuff. The nosy bitch down the street talked about all kinds of crazy stuff. But like that was something with that. And of course, we talked about Mark for Death with Dwight Little. For anybody that's curious, in case you didn't know this, Steven Seagal was the first person that Eliza called after Brandon got shot. Look it up. I'm not joking. Like, I don't believe it at all. But
Yeah.
Steven Seagal did an interview. It's very famous where he talks about Eliza called him and said, "Steven, I don't understand. Something happened with Brandon." And Steven's like, "I think he was shot. If you look, you're gonna find the bullet." And it's just like,
Right.
what?
Yeah.
Like, what on earth? But it's one of Steven Seagal is a crazy interviewer. Like,
Yeah.
he does the craziest
We'll
interviews.
just say he's lived a unique life.
He has
Say that.
lived a unique life. So anybody that wants to know more about Steven Seagal, go back to episode 2.
There you go. Nice. Check that out.
Kind of
Well,
comes full circle.
it is.
Episode 2 about
Yeah.
Steven, episode 3 about the Crow, and here we are back again talking about
I think
Brandon in
hey,
another capacity.
that's our I think that's back to back episodes where we mention the Fat Man again.
Yeah, I know, because we've
Was
went
he?
a while without bringing him up.
Brent
So
Foster was in two of his movies. Yeah,
yeah,
there it is.
and he was the star and wasn't even on the cover of one of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Had to put the fat man up there instead of the dead guy star.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
he sat a lot in that movie, or at least what I watched. Sitting down a
Steven
lot.
Seagal wishes he could be the athlete that Brent Foster is. He
Oh yeah.
could fight that way. But anyway,
Oh, yeah.
way off topic, but hey, kind of fun. All
All right.
right. Well, is that it? We hit the end of the tape.
That's it.
All right. We're going to hit the rewind button, get to the video button, get to the video store.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Like, subscribe, share the podcast. Gonna have some great stuff coming up. Probably a mail day, some hot watches, and more of us.
The memorabilia tour.
Also, memorabilia tour. Also, comment below if you like for us to check out any retro movies, and we'll shoot them a review.
All right.
And as always, be kind, rewind.